Hello, everybody. In this episode of Violin Lounge TV, two injured and quarantined violinists here to load in self-pity. Share with you some useful tips to get back to the violin, to get back to practicing after injury, life getting in the way, maybe quarantine laziness. And we'll go into the motivation, but also some practical tips on choosing repertoire, getting back your technique, and warming up your bow hand and also your left hand. I'll introduce my special guest of today. Welcome, Vivien Hoffman. She's a violinist living in Germany, in Berlin. There she gives concerts with her pianist. She teaches, and she also teaches online in my program Bow Like a Pro, and also on her own YouTube channel. So welcome, Vivien. Good for you to join us here.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And we both were injured. I made a salad, cutting myself quite deep, actually. I was quite hysterical about that because I really cut my finger, my second finger, and saw a piece of nail floating, saw the wound smack at me. And yeah, usually I'm not a sissy. I gave natural birth to twins, but if as a violinist something happens to your hands, it's terrible. It resulted in healing quite quickly. But for the violin, of course, it's sensitive. I couldn't play for 1 week, and the finger really was in a big white bandage, and it was quite hard to convince my 9-month-old twin that it was not a squeeze toy, and it also wasn't food. So that was quite a challenge. What was also a challenge that for 2 or 3 weeks I couldn't really play anything, but very slow, careful scales, because if I played a semitone or put my finger down differently in a chord or whatever, I hit the cut and then it started hurting again. So my motivation was quite out of the window, really pushed myself. And Vivien was also injured. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Yes, well, I had some dental surgery, and it was on my left lower jaw. It was exactly where I hold the violin. And the scary part of that was I had no idea how long it would be until I could play again. That was one of the reasons I kept on putting the surgery off, because I didn't know how long it would take me to get back. And then when we were all quarantined because of Corona and all my concerts were cancelled, I thought, okay, well, I'll go ahead with this now. And I was out for about a week, I would say. And then when I started playing, I played without my chin on the violin, basically like this. The very old-fashioned way, and I could only play up to about 4th position, but at least I could move my fingers. So, and then it felt better. It's not as bad as a cut. A cut usually takes longer because, like you said, you have to be very careful about how you place your finger, and if you start to, it just makes things take even longer. So it wasn't that bad. I've had worse injuries, but even 1 week of not playing, I could feel it and I could hear it. So that was difficult.
Yeah, that's why I started after 1 week with the cut, because I just didn't want to go back. The famous violinist Jascha Heifetz said, if I don't practice 1 day, I know it. If I don't practice for 2 days, the critics know it. And if I don't practice for 3 days, the public knows it. Can you maybe explain a little what you notice after a couple of days of not practicing?
Well, the first thing I actually noticed, which shows once again how important the bow is, that these very fine movements, they're not very exact. So my bow changes don't sound, and I don't have good sound. Intonation, my correction speed is slow. And I also notice the hearing. It takes a couple of days to actually get a very accurate hearing again. So basically after a break, it doesn't sound as it's out of tune, and I can't correct it fast enough. So it's never very motivating to start again.
Yeah. And for me, exactly the same. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Well, what did you notice after the week?
Well, for me, I notice it most in intonation actually. So it really takes a lot of scales to get it in tune again and to be able to play what's in your head from the violin. In the vibrato, I notice that it's stiff. So most of the times what I do is that I play a very slow and wide vibrato because my vibrato gets kind of stiff and narrow. And for the bow arm, you quickly notice that if you're not playing for days, that the pinky gets weak, so you don't get that movement. So the kind of the same things. And yeah, I think we both have had students who didn't play for years and want to get back, and that can be very intimidating. So. Can you share maybe a little bit about what you did when you got back to the violin? So how you warmed up, what steps you took to get back to playing again?
Well, what I do is that I start very, very slowly because the most important thing is the intonation and the correction speed. And all of that only works if I can produce a decent sound. So I start very slowly with double stops, basically not thinking about any kind of rhythm, taking multiple bows, staying on each double stop until it's in tune and until it sounds good, and then moving on. That's one of the reasons why I often start with Bach, because scales are equally good. It's a psychological thing with me. Scales don't motivate me enough. Yeah. So I usually start with Bach because it has a similar effect, and Bach sounds good even if you play it very, very slowly. So at least I'm making music. So that's usually how I start. But most people wouldn't even recognize the piece. That's how slow I play it.
So from my Instagram followers, I had some input for this video. And one question was how to learn to master the techniques but still have a beautiful tone. So if I understand correctly, what you're saying is that you should first focus to get a decent sound, to get a good full sound. And from there, you can start working on the techniques again.
That's about what I do, simply to make it as easy as possible for myself. If I push myself after I've had a break, then that's not going to get me anywhere. In general, when I'm in training, I separate the two. I practice rhythm only and live with the fact that the sound or the intonation is off. And then I practice sound and intonation only, completely discarding the rhythm. And then I slowly start putting them together. But if I've taken a longer break for whatever reason, I need to have the violin sound again, and it needs to be in tune. Otherwise, I just feel terrible. But that's personally on my side. With pupils, I would probably adapt, and I would probably suggest try and see what works best for you. Because sometimes only practicing sound and intonation, that's not for everyone.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's very difficult to stay motivated, I think, certainly because I wasn't able in the weeks after the cut to practice Bach or something because of the chords, actually, and some semitones. So because I wanted to start with Bach, but that just didn't go. So because I have too many automated grips in that, so I kind of get that chord down, and then it was ouch. So I really had to play very slow scales and having my eye on the finger that I was placing it in a correct way, which probably has benefited finger placement. But it wasn't really good for motivation. I'm kind of used to push myself in practice, and but I think maybe for professionals that's in some way easier because we have to be able to keep our level to pay the bills. It's as simple as that. So even if I don't feel like practicing, I practice anyway because that's kind of the professional thing. But if it's your hobby and you have to focus on sound and intonation or just playing scales, I think it's really difficult to do that. And it's someone in Instagram even said, how do I find the courage to go back to the violin? So maybe as an amateur, it's better to kind of get maybe a Kugler or a reading concerto and get something really easy just to have some motivation that you feel that you can do something. How do you tackle this with students who didn't practice for a long while?
Well, absolutely. Start with something which is too easy, because just playing the violin is difficult enough. Remember, this is an instrument where even playing open strings with a good sound is not easy. You need to be able to do that. And it's true, as professionals, it's a lot easier because, like you said, we have no choice. We have to practice. And we've been in this situation since early childhood. So the question, practicing was not really a question for most of our lives. I don't even remember what it was like not playing the violin, not having to practice. So when you reach a certain age, you're sort of used to it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That actually helps a lot. And also the experience, knowing, okay, the first week is not going to be fun, but then it'll get better. That helps a lot. For people who've had years not playing, I can totally understand that it takes courage. Yeah. And I would definitely recommend start with something which is nice but very easy, so that you get to feeling that you can do this, that you have a feeling of success, and the most important, so that you can enjoy yourself, because you have to try to enjoy yourself as much as you can on the violin, because it's hard enough. And remember, if you start after a long time, it hurts. This is playing around, it's painful. So really not easy to do.
Yeah, because someone on Instagram also asked, how can I pick repertoire that is challenging, but at the same time good to start with after not practicing? And I think maybe there's no way to do this. There's either repertoire that is easy and that you pick out to start with and to warm up, and then there is a time and place for challenging new repertoire. I guess I wouldn't know how to combine the two, actually. So what I always recommend...
I wouldn't combine the two. Basically, I would, if you're starting after a break, it's definitely better to start with something which is very easy. And then challenge yourself in scales and exercises before you challenge yourself in pieces. Because you should be able to play the pieces. My teacher, Rogero Ricci, had a very good method. He said, play scales and exercises which are too difficult for you, and play pieces which are too easy for you.
That's a good quote.
It works quite well, because it's okay to challenge yourself in scales, exercises, etudes, but you shouldn't challenge yourself in pieces, because you can't make music if you're challenged.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And also, I think that, if I play a scale badly one day, I can feel bad about myself, but it's not that you're playing a beautiful piece and it's kind of sacrilege in a way that you just imagine Mozart turning in his grave for what you're doing. While if you play a scale badly, it's just a scale, So
exactly, I feel exactly the same way. So it just hurts to make a mess of beautiful pieces. While with scales, well, all you have to do is pick a difficult scale and play it fast, and you're likely to mess it up, because some of them are really difficult. So one gets used to messing up scales, but like you said, beautiful piece, you don't want to mess it up any more than necessary. So that actually really does help.
I think it's getting through the first time and trying to stay motivated, keeping the end goal in mind, and making it as fun as possible is really good. And do you have, perhaps, someone asked, a power routine to warm up? Are there, besides the scales, the slow practice for tone, other warming up exercises that you would recommend?
Well, basically, you can warm up in a piece if you play it slowly enough. And right now, I'm like a negative example, because I'm not practicing scales right now, and I never thought I'd actually say this, but it's actually a time question. So I'm practicing my technique in my repertoire, which works if you're doing things like Bach. And so it's possible, but only if you spent plenty of years playing scales. And I wouldn't recommend this to anyone. But what I always do is I start with whatever I'm practicing very slowly, trying to concentrate on making a big sound, a good sound. Making a really big sound is quite difficult on the violin, so that actually gives me a lot to do. And usually after about 10-15 minutes, I notice that I can speed up a little bit. And then I'm basically into the normal practicing. What's very good for people starting after a long break, if they're the disciplined type, is a little bit of left-hand pizzicato. It doesn't have to be anything special. Just pluck the things with the strings with the left hand. Just pluck the open strings. No big deal.
Yeah. With your finger.
That's excellent for the muscles of the fingers of the left hand. You can't really do anything wrong, but you have to be very careful not to do it more than perhaps 30 seconds or 1 minute at the most in the beginning, because otherwise you'll get blisters and then you're back to taking a break, so that won't help.
You're back again at start, just like in Monopoly.
Exactly. I've been there, I've done that, so I wouldn't recommend.
Yeah, that's also the mistake, by the way, because we talked about how to find the motivation, but of course you can also be too motivated that you dive in head first and then practice for hours and then you wake up and can't move your neck or something. And so that's also a danger that, and I try to do that myself if I haven't played for a while, that the first day that I play that I don't go over an hour or something. And that I don't do exercises too long, because then the next day you can't do anything. So also be careful having too much motivation, because that isn't right either.
If I have something like a 2 or 3 week break for whatever reason, there's no way I would be able to do 1 hour to stretch. After 20 minutes, I notice already that it's enough. That's what makes it so tedious, because if I want to practice 2 hours and I have to take breaks after 20 minutes, it just takes forever. But definitely I would recommend for everyone to take a lot of breaks. They don't have to be long breaks, 5 or 10 minutes, but don't try to go on for too long. You'll just tense up and then nothing will work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very true. Yeah. And then people get frustrated even more and tense up even more. And I have seen this a lot with adult students, because children are more like, they're more in the playful kind of way. So if they play something and it's really simple, but it sounds good, then they're happy. And adults then push themselves a little bit more, that they have to do this and have to do that. And then you can get hurt in physically or mentally in terms of motivation, I think. So for the left hand, it's good to do the slow scales and to do the left hand pizzicato. And you got some great videos on that. I'll link to your channel for the left hand pizzicato series. I think that's really useful.
Seriously, don't practice that for too long at a stretch. You don't notice if you're doing it, and then you get blisters. So one has to be really careful there.
Yeah, violin playing asks a lot of concentration. So in that concentration, you can get really. For example, I had some neck issues and stuff, and I always felt it afterwards. I never felt it while playing. So same thing for blisters. If you walk and you get blisters, you most of the times discover them when you come home and take off your shoes, and the same is for the violin. You'll probably discover them when your violin is back in its case, which is too late.
Exactly.
I think. And do we have some warming up routines for the bow arm? Perhaps what I generally do, because I'm a very impatient person, is that I do play the scales with very long, slow notes. And what I do is that I exaggerate the movement right here. So I really go very deep with the pinky. And then this would be my normal movement, perhaps. And if I'm warming up, I'm really doing this for in the very long notes, I try to do scales with whole bow. And that's kind of my way to warm up the right hand. And of course, the tone exercise, which you mentioned, so that you create the fullest, most resonant sound that you can create. Do you have some other tips for the bow arm and the bow hand?
What I usually do and what I can recommend is in the Chevcik 40 variations, variation 1, exaggerate it slowly. It's actually the same thing which you said, you exaggerate the fourth finger of the right hand, because that's what gets weak. And you can usually tell when you're not in training because your finger slips off. And by doing that, and I do it ultra slow, it gets more difficult if you do it slowly, where I go. Literally at that speed is very difficult because you're carrying all the weight. And again, of course, sometimes I even have to take a break. I can't play the full variation through because it's so slow. But that's exactly which gets this moving again. And then after a while, the bow changes start to sound. And usually then I feel a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think it's also for people, don't avoid the frog, but really search for that difficulty if you're starting out again. Because if you're playing at the tip, I think people can kind of get a feeling that they are warmed up while they are not actually. So that's something to also look out for. Do something at the frog, at least. I think we've covered a lot of tips, and we're both happy to answer any further questions in the comments below. Do you have other things you would like to mention in this topic?
Well, one thing which I would strongly recommend in general, but particularly if you're starting out after a break, is not to press the strings down too much. One should feel the vibrations of the strings in one's fingertips. So that's very important because you'll only tense up. And also to keep a good flowing movement for the left hand, that the elbow is not static in one place, but that you're adjusting this way and this way. And for the bow, there again, we're back to slower tempi. Take plenty of bow, because with bow technique, the slower you play, the more difficult it usually gets. So what I often do is I discard bowings and I use plenty of bows so that this also becomes a flowing movement again and nothing jerky. So those are the things I would recommend.
Yeah, I think it's also important to know some people feel kind of stupid if they play slowly or if they play on open strings, while even at a conservatory, people are practicing on open strings and people have years of experience. So never be ashamed or whatever for playing slowly, because it's more difficult than playing fast and sloppy. Also playing on open strings to get back the sound, to get back the fluency in your bow is also really useful and can be something you can do on any level. I noticed for myself that I always need to maintain everything in my technique, that everything after a while, after not watching it, it kind of gets sloppier and sloppier. And then you notice it when you coincidentally play in front of a mirror, or when, I'm recording myself a lot, which is actually a very good learning tool as well. And then I notice, hey, I'm doing this wrong or I'm doing that wrong. And those are sometimes advanced things, but sometimes they're really basic things. Things in the bow hold that creeps up the bow, and then or that I'm not moving it in the right way. So also be kind of happy that you can notice very simple things in your playing, and then you are, I think, further away, if that even matters, than someone who's ignoring all that and trying to rush into maybe advanced pieces. So
absolutely. I learned to practice slowly by starting to enjoy the sound, because when I play slowly, it's easier to play with a good sound, it's easier to play in tune. And once I got the hang of getting the violin to sing, I didn't mind playing slowly anymore. In fact, nowadays I have to push myself to play fast because I know the level will drop.
Yeah, that's a different problem. Yeah, I think every area of violin playing sadly needs constant maintenance. So I think that's important to know. You don't. I even sometimes, and certainly of children, if I tell younger students that I'm still practicing, and then they think like, why you're teaching? You know, you can already play. Why do you practice? And they really have to explain that I have to practice every day to not get worse. And then hopefully I can also practice to get better. But for a young pupil, you are, of course, you know, if you're an adult, you're like a grandmother. And and if you're so old, why do you still practice? I think it was the cellist Pablo Casals who was practicing still at the age of 93 or something, or 73 hours a day. And he said, yeah, when the journalist asked him why he still practiced, because adults ask that too. Then he said, yeah, I'm beginning to notice some improvement. So let's all strive for that. I can only hope I can play at that late age.
Yes, right.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much for all the useful tips, Vivien. Maybe people can let us know in the comments which tips are most helpful. That's very useful for us to know. Because and maybe there are some topics that you want to hear more about. So please let us know in the comments what was useful, what would you like to learn more, and just keep playing, just start, even if you haven't played for a while, and be very gentle with yourself. It's already achievement that you're playing, that you're practicing, that you've started again. Have fun mainly. Vivien, thank you so much for your input, and I'd love to have you back, of course. That will certainly happen. And everyone have a great day, and thanks for watching.